Hello and welcome to Coffee Time with Abcadeas. I'm your host Abcadeas, and this is the show where you just might see me take a sip of what I like to call coffee sometimes, but once again, it is water today. But more or less, I just kind of rant and rave about anything and everything I'm interested in. So today I want to tackle one of my bigger topics, a topic I've been doing a lot of preparation for. I'm still not going to likely hit all the points that I actually want to hit, but I figured I'd give this a good old college try and see how much I can fit into one video. So today I want to talk specifically about the derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. I know there was also one in South Carolina, as well as one in Texas, where I believe it was an 18 wheeler semi truck that actually hit the train and caused it to derail. I'm not going to go into those other two today, but I think, at least in the case of the South Carolina one, while I haven't done too much research, a lot of the points, at least around the causes of this whole incident, I think those most likely will remain pertinent for the derailment in South Carolina as well. Obviously, not so much the one in Texas, as, like I said, I believe it was the 18 wheeler that hit the actual train and not the other way around, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't have full confirmation on that. One interesting fact about that, though, is all three rail lines that were involved, BlackRock and Vanguard, both have investments in, or they have subsidiaries that have investments in those rail lines. So it's an interesting fact that kind of brings them all together. But basically, if you don't know, if you're not aware, which I wouldn't be surprised at this point because this hasn't been a huge story on the mainstream media, there's been some talk here and there, and most of the articles you read is the mainstream media saying, don't worry, everything is just fine. The EPA did their test, there's nothing to worry about. Just go on living your daily lives. And I'm going to get into some videos a little further on in this video, but that definitely doesn't seem to be the case. Anyways, to start off, I'm just going to show some pictures here. This is a picture of the derailment itself. So with this derailment, there was several hazardous chemicals that were on board. Quite a few of them are harmful to the environment in different ways, but the main one I know about is vinyl chloride. And I'll admit, I just recently learned about this chemical. I'm sure I learned about it in high school or something like that, but more recently with this train derailment, I have learned a lot more about it. I've kind of written it down here in some bullet points to summarize it a bit. So basically, vinyl chloride, it does get confused with polyvinyl chloride sometimes, but it is different. Polyvinyl chloride is the stuff made to use like household plastics. I believe it's generally a bit more safe than vinyl chloride itself. OSHA has the permissible limit set at 1 part per million, and that is an average over an 8-hour shift. And this particular chemical is extremely volatile and actually has a boiling point of 8 degrees Fahrenheit. So when it started leaking, it was also spewing boiling gas into the atmosphere. Um, the couple pictures I'll show now, you can see here's kind of a picture from afar of what those boiling gases looked like going up into the atmosphere. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this picture already, but it's just absolutely horrific. Here's a view from above. It definitely has leaked a lot of chemicals into the atmosphere. Again, another picture of the cloud there. I'll go over to the map in just a moment. But yeah, definitely there was quite a bit leaked into the atmosphere, and it looks like it would have quite an effect. At least for the uninitiated, those who aren't aware of atmospheric science, like myself, you would see such a giant mushroom cloud almost billowing up into the sky, and you would assume that that can't be good for the environment. So this chemical has been spilled before. Previously, I believe the biggest spill was in New Jersey, where one car carrying about 23,000 gallons spilled. It didn't catch fire, though. I'm not entirely sure of the specifics, but that particular crash, that particular derailment was a lot less impactful, I guess, a lot less damaging than the current one we're looking at. The current one we're looking at, it looks like there's 5 train cars total that have actually leaked their chemicals. I would suggest it's maybe more looking at that picture, but obviously I don't really know. I'm not on the ground. I'm not experienced in this field, so I can't say for certain. But with those 5 cars, they were carrying anywhere from 25,000 to 33,000 gallons of the hydrogen chloride, which, when it turns into a gas, becomes vinyl chloride. Oh no, other way around. Vinyl chloride, when that's burnt, it creates hydrogen chloride. And then when hydrogen chloride goes into the atmosphere, it latches onto water vapor and creates hydrochloric acid. In other words, acid rain. I'll post a link to a more expansive article on this, but here's just kind of a blurb about the effects hydrochloric acid can have. So, in high concentrations in air, hydrogen chloride can make it difficult to breathe, and at very high concentrations, continuing to breathe it can be fatal. Hydrochloric acid in contact with skin or other tissues can cause chemical burns that can be severe, and hydrochloric acid in the eyes can cause blindness. So, obviously, this stuff being in the atmosphere, it raining down on the land, seeping into the ground, all of this is going to have an effect, and a detrimental effect on the people living around the area. So, like I said, I have quite a few pictures I want to show, but I am going to pull up one more that I missed here. From my understanding, the EPA and Norfolk Southern, the company that is actually in charge of that particular railway, that particular line of track, and is more or less responsible for what we have in front of us. I'm going to get a bit more into that. I think the blame is a little more widespread than just one particular company, but it is definitely worth considering. So with this is probably not the best quality map, but I've seen quite a few, and I think this illustrates the point perhaps the best. Let's get this up. So this is the crash site, and this is just some points about what has been reported in and around the areas of the crash. So from what I understand, Norfolk Southern themselves are asserting that it is only this area that is being affected once this loads up. So this particularly small area, this is right where the crash happened, and they're asserting that it's only a 1-mile radius that people will actually be affected. And we'll get into a bit about why it is affecting a lot more people than that, but I think one of the strongest indicators of that is as these chemicals seep into the ground, they're also going to get into the groundwater and eventually into the river water. And the Ohio River Basin, to my understanding, does connect to the rest of the rivers in the United States, and thusly will trickle these chemicals down to all the water supply in the United States, at least what water supply is taken from freshwater rivers. Again, I don't know too many of the specifics here. I may be getting one or two things incorrect. That's why I've kind of taken a while to prepare this video, to get as prepared as I can. But I don't think I can be any more prepared than I currently am. So, like I was saying, the EPA the governor of Ohio, they're all saying that it's no problem, don't worry about it, there's no issue, no detections of vinyl chloride or hydrogen chloride above levels of concern. This is the EPA's official website here. You can see everything I've highlighted in green is basically going over the EPA and Governor DeWine saying that the municipal water, the air, is completely safe to consume. They actually discontinued air monitoring for certain gases as well as hydrogen chloride on the 14th. Again, the 13th did not detect anything above the action level, so basically anything that needs to be taken care of has not detected any levels of concern, right? You know, you can read this website for yourself, but it's the whole thing is basically just saying, yep, there is no problem at all. There's nothing to worry about. Don't be concerned. And again, I am not intricately familiar with the topic. I'm not experienced in environmental chemistry, I guess would probably be the correct term here. I would find it very hard to believe that a chemical that can do damage to the skin, can cause blindness, can even cause death, that copious amounts of that leaking into the atmosphere and into the groundwater, is not having any effect whatsoever. And as we can kind of see from the few TikToks I'm going to show here, I do apologize, it is TikTok. This is where I've been seeing the most East Palestine related content. I do watch YouTube quite a bit, but I haven't found as many primary sources, I guess. A little disclaimer I'll give before this. I haven't been able to verify that any of these videos are actually coming out of East Palestine, but I would have a hard time believing that any of these individuals would be lying or misrepresenting what they're seeing in front of them. So take all of this with a grain of salt, but here's a few videos I'm going to go through from the people that at least claim to be from East Palestine. First one being is an air quality sample. I believe this was taken early on. This video is at least from a week ago. I think it's a little longer than that, so it was a couple days after the derailment, if not the day or two after. And you can see here outside is fine, but then once he goes in his basement, there are quite a few chemicals where the water is coming into the house, and those toxic gases are seeping through into the air in the house. That's where he's getting these readings, those same readings that the EPA said were nothing to worry about. Again, I don't know much about air quality testing. I don't know much about this particular air quality tester. I don't know that it is accurate or that the information being presented here is accurate, but I figured I would kind of forward it along anyways. And then the next one is, again, I believe, this was actually posted 1 day ago, but I did see the initial copy of this video a couple days ago. And here you can see they throw a rock in the water, and this is the river basin out of East Ohio. It may be maybe slightly outside, because I know quite a few communities around there are affected. But you can see, it may be hard to make out in this video, but you can see the actual chemicals glimmering in the water itself. Definitely doesn't look safe to drink or safe to bathe in. And that's essentially the decision the residents of East Palestine, Ohio are being faced with. Essentially, do they start over all over again in another city? Most likely won't be able to sell their house in East Palestine. So do they start over from scratch in another city, or do they risk bathing and feeding their kids with this water, right? Like, that's a horrific decision to make, and one I would think that a first world country or the greatest country in the world would never force its citizens to make. And while it isn't an exact parallel, I think it's somewhat relevant to mention here that during the Chernobyl disaster, despite being in the lead up to and kind of in the beginning of the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Soviet officials actually evacuated everybody from Pripyat, gave them new homes, compensated them correctly and made sure they were taken care of. I'll get into a minute. I'll get into in a minute what the Norfolk Southern Railway Company is doing for the people of East Palestine, Ohio, but it is definitely not equivalent to rehousing them. The next one I want to point out here is this person is drinking a coffee. I'm going to see if I can't play the sound. Nope, the sound may not work for us. Let me get that resolved. Okay, sound should work now, hopefully. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So that's not good, right? The milk literally sizzles when it goes into the water. It's having a chemical reaction with the coffee that's obviously made with tap water, and that doesn't seem safe to drink. Again, I don't know a lot about chemistry. I don't know a lot about this particular field of science, but this all seems like a relatively bad situation. And you have this one as well. This lady, this is a picture of the water that she actually took from her tap. It is literally green. And I'm going to have these all linked below, so feel free, check them out yourself. Don't just listen to me, definitely do a bit of your own research here. But this specifically right here is what I wanted to bring up. Is this particular form, this individual took a picture of with their phone. They weren't allowed to keep a copy. But I believe it was the EPA themselves. It might have been state officials, but basically they came to do some free water testing, and they made them sign this consent form so they can enter the home. But right at the end of it, I'm paraphrasing a bit here, but basically was a statement saying that you will not hold us accountable for any of the damage that has been done due to this. So essentially, they were taking people's fears that they want their water tested. They want some peace of mind that that water is safe, and they were basically using it to have these people sign away their legal rights in terms of this whole fiasco. I don't know how well that would stand up in court, to be honest. I believe the EPA or the state officials, whoever initially gave this lady this form to sign, they have said that this form was sent in error. It was the incorrect form, and that's not the one that they meant to send out. It was just an accident, right? I mean, if you believe that, I have a very big bridge to sell you in the city of London. Just get at me. I'll shoot you the details. But it is definitely not a good sign that the company that's actually responsible, EPA, people that are actually responsible, I believe it actually have been Norfolk Southern. Okay, yeah, it was actually Norfolk Southern. So it wasn't the EPA, it wasn't the state, it was Norfolk Southern that actually conducted these chemical tests and got the residents to sign off, basically releasing all responsibility from Norfolk Southern. And then that map I showed you, that small little area in East Palestine, Ohio, obviously is not the only area that has been affected. I've seen several videos from from people in areas that are close to Ohio, like in Pennsylvania, in Indiana, and the one I want to show is actually one from Wisconsin, and this one I think is absolutely wild. We can keep the sound off for this, but essentially this is one of those like let's prove it TikToks. You know, they see something on TikTok and they're like, well, we're gonna prove that thing works. And what that thing was is that the snow coming down outside is literally plastic. That when you put a lighter up to it, it doesn't melt. That it burns and smells like burning plastic. It is literally snowing plastic in Wisconsin. And the EPA continues to tell us that everything is safe. Don't worry, there is nothing to worry about. Why would you be concerned? You are a crazy person. You need to turn on CNN and you need to read the news story. It says it's safe. How could you not believe that? Right? Right? And what's also great about this is all the same kind of side effects you would have from ingesting these chemicals, like coughing, wheezing, being short of breath. They are also symptoms of COVID-19. I don't care what you think about COVID-19, the vaccines, none of that. But as the symptoms are very similar, if not exactly the same for both COVID-19 and inhaling these chemicals, the company gets to sit back and say, well, could have been COVID. We don't really know, do we? Because in the process of holding a company like this liable, it is on the defendant to prove beyond a doubt that the damages they've experienced, the sicknesses, the ailments they've experienced, are directly a result of the incident that took place. It is not on the company. It is not on the defendant. It is on. It's not the prosecutor, but the person making the claim, right? Trying to sue the company. It is on them to prove that they actually got these symptoms from this derailment. But, you know, it's okay. Norfolk Southern is ready to make up for their mistake. They are ready to make amends with the people of East Ohio. And they are doing that by giving $25,000 to the residents of East Palestine, Ohio. That's great, right? You know, Norfolk Southern, you know, they did all this damage. They're putting people's lives in danger. They're putting kids' lives in danger, but they're giving everybody $25,000. Oh, wait. It's giving $25,000 to the town. That's it. That's all they're giving is $25,000. And while I don't have 100% confirmation on this, I believe that basically boils down to $5 a person for the people that were affected. Life-altering effects. Your home is borderline not safe to live in. At least it's not safe to consume the water or breathe the air around your home. You most likely have to relocate, or you have to risk death of you and your children. But it's fine. Go buy yourself a Starbucks. You got yourself $5. What are you complaining about? But you know, this isn't Norfolk Southern's fault. It's just a standard derailment. There's nothing they could have done to foresee this or to prevent this. Right? Well, it turns out this incident is only coming months after Joe Biden, you know, our favorite man in the White House. This is only coming a few months after he actually forced through a union agreement that was meant to avoid a rail strike. What's important to note about this is so 8 of the 12 unions did agree. So the majority of unions did agree, but the other 4 that didn't agree represent more than half of the railway workers. So more than half of the railway workers rejected this deal. And okay, whatever, you know, it's just a union deal. Union deals fall through all the time. What's the big deal, right? But we can see right here, the whole reason they were preparing to strike, the whole reason they were trying to renegotiate their deal is because they have very demanding schedules. It's very difficult for them to take a day off. Engineers and conductors are on call 24/7. And this is all because unions agreed decades ago that they would forego paid sick time in favor of getting higher wages and strong short-term disability benefits. So that's a reason that the union deal shouldn't be renegotiated now, right? That Congress should just ram it through and prevent these people from striking, because that's completely democratic and totally something that happens in the best country in the world, in a first world country. Air quotations, very heavy there. But the final point to kind of pay attention to in this article, again, all the links will be down below, but the workers themselves, say that their jobs have become significantly more demanding because the railroad has cut 1/3 of their jobs. So there is 1/3, 33% less people. There were 3 people doing a job before, now it's only 2. And I'm sure if you don't live off of your parents' trust fund, or your dad isn't a CEO at a company where he got you a job, I'm sure you are very aware of cuts to labor and how that has affected every single worker, not just railway workers. My girlfriend, she works for a storage company. She kind of started at a time when they just finished their downsizing, but essentially every single day that she works, at least at one particular site, every single day that she works, at the end of her 8-hour shift, she has so many things that she hasn't done and hasn't been able to do. And that is entirely a result of that business being established, that particular location being established with 2 people operating it. So, under the assumption that 2 people will be working at all times. Turns out, companies are companies. They need to optimize profits as much as possible. They cut one of those workers. So now you have one person trying to do 2 people's jobs. So she took over from somebody that left after years and years and just abruptly left. Basically couldn't handle it anymore, threw in the towel. And when my girlfriend showed up to this location, there were so many things. There was a giant list of things that were just never done and couldn't be done because there wasn't enough time to do it. And that is just one anecdotal example, but if you have worked in any kind of workforce whatsoever, shortly before I got my more tech-related jobs more recently, I worked retail for a short period, and I watched as they cut back hours and expected more and more and more of us in a single shift. A cashier now had to be a stock person and also had to be a customer service person to help bring people to the aisle and also watch the front of the store and watch the cash register and watch everybody coming into the store. And we're not talking about a small retail outlet. We're talking about a relatively big pharmacy slash grocery store. And, it is just a result of companies existing and companies making profits, right? As they continue to optimize profit margins because they haven't raised the prices on everything enough already, and they aren't making enough record profits already, which, by the way, every single rail company reported profits surpassing 1 billion. And to be clear, profits are after you subtract costs. So that's after you've paid labor, and that's after you've paid all your legal fees and all your research and development costs and all that kind of stuff. That is the amount of money that company was able to take to the bank and essentially hand out to their shareholders. But they can only spare $25,000 for the residents of East Palestine, Ohio. But that's because it's no big deal. There's no issue. There's nothing to worry about. The sizzling milk in your coffee, the rainbow glimmering water in the river, the plastic snow 2 states away. That's not a concern. What's the concern there? What's the issue? Why are you mad? Right? Like, I didn't even know much of what I was going to say coming into this video, but I would love to say that I'm shocked by this, but I'm really not. The government isn't going to hold these people accountable. The government lobbies on behalf of these companies. That's why Joe Biden, forced this deal through, right? He even said communities will maintain access to clean drinking water. Isn't that the lie of the century? And here's the claim: several of the big railroads reported more than 1 billion profit in the third quarter. But I think what's most appalling about this is not even a basic acknowledgement that the people in East Palestine could be in danger. Because there is no system in America, there is nothing that exists under the system the West functions under to rehouse a large group of people. There's FEMA shelters, which are not a solution. They are temporary housing that a lot of people, I believe, in New Orleans ended up living in for a lot longer than they should have been because they were never given new homes. There was nothing, much of anything done for them once the few initial relief efforts kind of started. And that seems to be a similar situation here. It's gotten to the point that all Western media, and I don't really think any alternative media is reporting on this outside of the West. I have seen quite a few commentators. One that is really instrumental, that has provided me with a lot of information. I believe his name is Nick Drom. Uh, he's summarized and he's been paying attention kind of step by step through this whole process. But it is still ongoing. I think everybody in America, in Canada, even if, especially if you're in Toronto or the Southern Ontario area, anywhere that's close to that US border, we really need to be paying attention to this. And we really need to be paying attention to our own water supply, our own snowfall, our own air quality. But it seems like this is just a joke. The Chinese balloon that was shot down is a more important thing to pay attention to. And it's not like any of the Western media covering the Chinese balloon covered it in the way I did, talking about the wider geopolitical implications of it. They're mainly just trying to fan the flames of the US State Department's drive towards a war with China, right? They're just trying to amp up rhetoric. They're trying to amp up the public, trying to get them mad at Chinese people, get them excited, get them ready for this oncoming war with China. But the Western media isn't covering those balloons in that way. They give you some cursory information. They give you a bit of what the president says, and that's it. They may give you a slight perspective or a partial quote out of China that most likely misrepresents the situation entirely. But the whole reason I covered the balloon and covered it as extensively as I did is because I think this is gonna be like a demarcation point. This is the kind of point we can point to where U.S. China relations shifted into an irreversible hostile state. After Pelosi's visit last year, like I mentioned in my last video, you did see the shift in rhetoric from the foreign minister, but this is the first time we've actually seen China impose sanctions on U.S. military producers. So I think that is still a very relevant story if the proper issues are being addressed, if the proper analysis is conducted. But I really don't think that should be taking a back seat, or that this story on this derailment in East Palestine should be taking a back seat. If any of the mainstream media news companies were worth their salt, they would be having these EPA officials, this governor, officials from Norfolk Southern. They would be having them on for interviews. They would be grilling them for specific information. They would be, I don't know, converging, having like a three-way call type of situation with residents that are actually being affected. I've seen several videos now. I haven't been able to dig them up for this video, but I've seen several videos of people's chickens dying, people's dogs dying, all sorts of animals dying, people experiencing breathing issues, fierce headaches. Like, this isn't something that's going to go away, at least not in terms of the physical chemicals that are in the atmosphere. It may kind of be erased from the Western conscious, but this is just wild. This is ultimately a result of having a system that focuses entirely on profit and relies on stopgaps and regulations to get those companies that are focused on profit to do the right thing. But then at the same time, the people that make those regulations are taking handfuls of money from the people they're regulating. Seems like it could be a bad idea. And even if they weren't, these corporations, especially like railway corporations, The whole reason the railway strike was such a big deal is because a stoppage of the rail lines of the railway system would cost billions and billions of dollars to the US economy. So even if these corporations weren't donating copious amounts to US lawmakers, they would still have pull and influence. Like in Canada, to my knowledge, on the federal level, political corporate political contributions are banned entirely. But companies like SNC Lavalin still get to lever their market position and the amount of jobs they provide to Canadians, quote unquote. And that allows them to manipulate the government in their favor. As our entire well being, our entire quality of life is based on these companies succeeding and doing well and being generous enough to give us a big enough share of their profits so that we can live in a house and eat human food. Nothing more. You don't get to own the house. Probably don't get to drive a car. But you'll get the bare minimum. And that's probably going to be less and less and less as time goes. You look at any wage versus productivity graph, and you can clearly see that corporations are making more and more and more and more money, while people are making the same amount of money that they have been for 40 years. And it just, I like to be optimistic about these things, but I've seen so many people already trying to refute these videos, these people on the ground reporting what they're seeing. And I've seen so many people go on that this system is the best way to do it, that humans aren't motivated by anything other than profit. Before money was invented, humans were just doing nothing. You know, like they don't say that, but that's what they're asserting, as if mankind didn't build the whole idea of society and community out of a necessity to survive, that they had to have had some kind of profit motive, or that they would have had to have been paid for it. This is a debate I actually had, I believe it was in my 10th grade AP World History class. But I think the most powerful explanation, or at least the most believable, I guess, explanation for how cities, towns, society was first founded was just a matter of humans realizing they do better in groups, that having multiple humans with multiple skills is a net positive. There wasn't money, there wasn't trade, there wasn't currency back then. Those people still built houses and still went hunting and still got food. I don't I just wish people could see past money and profit. And not just in terms of wanting money or wanting profit, but seeing past that human beings, it is not a fundamental part of our existence to have currency and to trade things and to value people based off of all the imaginary digital numbers in an account, based off all the assets and all the imaginary things that they own, and futures trading. Like, I don't get how anyone thinks this is the best system that exists. It is beyond me, but stuff like this is bound to keep happening and will happen. Like I mentioned, there's two other derailments that have happened since this one on February 3rd, and more are going to happen, because it doesn't seem like any of the rail companies are anxious to hand out more money to their employees and are perfectly okay signing a $25,000 check, maybe paying some environmental testing fees, and just being on their way. And they don't care if this continues to happen. They don't care if workers continue to have a miserable quality of life and continue to make very glaring mistakes that they otherwise might not have made if they were working a reasonable amount of hours and if they actually had any degree of rights. But this is America, right? What do you mean freedom? What do you mean rights? That's not America. Oh, wait. It is America. But no. That's the freedom to be racist and homophobic and bigoted and hateful. That's not the freedom to have clean air to breathe, or clean water to drink, or to have a house to live in, or to be able to get a job. Like, this is the greatest country in the world. Like, what, you just think you could get a job and buy a house and drink clean water? You should have tried harder. You should have pulled up your bootstraps, and then maybe you could have afforded a house that was 100 times your salary, that the bank wouldn't even let you get a mortgage for because your rent payment is twice the amount that the mortgage payment would be, but you just don't have good enough credit. You know, you should have just pulled up your bootstraps and you should have just did better, right? Like I said, this was a very disorganized rant, but I feel like I got a lot of information out there. I got a few of the primary sources that I've seen, that I've paid a bit of attention to. I still missed a lot of the stuff that I've seen that I just didn't make a note to collect into my document about this. It is absolutely wild. If there is any other major update, I'll probably bundle it into another video. I do, in regards to this topic. But I think that is about all I have to say. Um, like I said, I wish I was more surprised. I'm really not. I'm scared because even living in Alberta, far away from this, the trickle down effects are definitely are gonna be there. They may not be entirely noticeable, but again, I think this is just a first instance in what will be a lot of derailments, a lot of railway issues as a result of people being overworked and underpaid. So, yeah, that's really it for me today. I didn't even think I would get a video done today, but I've collected enough about this, and I thought enough about the narrative direction I wanted to take with this. I think I got most of everything out that I really wanted to say, and the important points I kind of wanted to draw attention to. I typically how I prepare these videos, I just collect sources and I basically write the video essentially in my head, create a narrative, and then just hit the record button, read through my sources, and go through that narrative in my head. And I kid you not, I have rearranged this and reorganized this at least 4 times, and I haven't been able to decide on a great narrative. So I just decided to pull the trigger today, get this out there. Better late than never. It's important information I think everybody needs to hear. Lastly, I am going the first link down below. Dylan Daniels of the Entitled Millennials also released a video on this today. So I'll have a link to his video down in the description if you want some more information, some more analysis from him. But, other than that, I think that is all for me today. And you have yourself a gooder.